pedal fork. I feel like a champion. Yeah. Come on in.
All right.
All right.
You see what I mean? Like everywhere you go, there's e-bikers.
Yeah, and for good reason. I think in the next 5 years, everyone is going to be on an e-bike.
See, I don't buy it. I just think there's going to be a massive group of people who don't want a motor between their legs and are going to want to pedal a mountain bike.
Yeah, you might be right, and I would say those guys are probably going to be in the minority because most people will be on some kind of electric bike. Let's hit the trails and I will prove why I think I'm right. Think about climbing, right? Which is normally the worst part of any ride on a regular bike. Getting on an e-bike, all of a sudden they're really fun.
Yeah, no, they are fun. Like a bit of power between your legs, like gets you there quickly, doesn't it?
Totally, and think about more technical climbs and all of a sudden you've got a different sort of challenge element involved and you're kind of testing different skills and learning as you go.
Yeah, I guess there's those places where they're opening up like e-bike only climbs, which as someone who likes to ride a normal mountain bike, they're kind of a challenge too. They're quite good fun.
Exactly. So in theory then, e-bikes kind of win in that regard, because if we're going uphill and e-bikes make going uphill more fun, not necessarily always easier because you can still get a hell of a workout, especially if I'm following you on that thing. Holy fucking hell! Your back wheel!
I hate to bring in like the whole cheating word, because like morally, I don't have an issue with e-bikes. I don't think I've ever got to the top of an e-bike climb and thought, I've really earned it. And I hate that argument. I hate the argument.
I know what you
mean.
But
you don't earn your climbs. And you know, we've just ridden together up this bit of hill. You've been like full chat. I'm on like quite a powerful e-bike, it's fair to say, but I've kind of just literally just cruised up there and it's been enjoyable, it's been fun because the bike's moving around and the tires are going blah, and it is fun. But I've got there and I got at the top and I'm like, yeah.
So it's not as rewarding in that sense that you feel like you've had a really hard workout?
I don't feel like I've put the effort in to sort of get there. And again, that whole sort of earn the descent argument falls down when you're looking at sort of accessibility. And I'll give e-bikes amazing ways to sort of have a broader spectrum of people out in the hills and riding, and you can go and ride with maybe mates who don't have the strength and the fitness, and that's cool. Maybe there's other accessibility issues around them. But for me, I like a technical, long, hard climb. Like I always feel great getting to those endorphins pumping through. I'll give you one thing as well actually with an e-bike, the whole like you get more laps in. When you've got like a power hour, you know, you've got an hour to get out, 2 hours to get out, and you want to hit sort of 2 tracks on a normal bike, you might get 4 on an e-bike, and that is kind of cool.
And again, it kind of brings a different sort of workout. Yes, you might be getting to the top with a bit more energy left, but because of the extra weight and the way in which you've got to ride them, it is kind of like going to the gym. You know after you've done 3, 4, 5 downhill runs, you can feel it.
I think when you're sort of bringing in those more technical, steeper climbs, you know, looser rocks, all that sort of stuff, they're amazing fun, but you still reach a limit where you can't climb. And because you've got, you know, potentially 25, 26 kilos between your legs, you know, balancing on 2 points, you're sort of like tripoding over the top, maybe your saddle's up. You've got a lot more weight there to sort of try and manage in a sort of a vaguely marginal situation. And actually, it can be quite difficult, quite dangerous.
I've had some pretty gnarly uphill crashes on e-bikes, to be fair.
I guess my final point on like a mountain bike or a muscle bike, or analog bike, there's all these horrible terms for them. My bike's never going to run out of battery. Like I'm always going to finish my ride. It's just my legs are going to be a bit tired. You've got to heft a big old bike around if you do run out of battery.
Yeah, you're right. But then again, you know, batteries are getting better in terms of capacity. And if you've got an idea about where you're riding, the chances are you're able to manage that battery power and, you know, make it around the entire loop.
Yeah, on a one-day ride. I can do multi-day rides.
Oh.
So in the UK, the e-bike can only assist you up to 25 kph, and that is the e-bike's Achilles heel.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because once you do exceed that, stuff does feel harder work, right? But what you need to remember is, in a really short amount of time, how much better these bikes have got. Less drag, they feel faster, you can ride all of that stuff and it doesn't feel like it's really holding you back.
Yeah, Mark 1 e-bikes were horrible. But you've got to remember though, still, even if you've sort of got no resistance in the motor, you've still got the weight of the battery and the motor. You've got heavy, sticky tires because these bikes tend to be built over, you know, for strength. And there's all these like extra e-bike specific components that just add weight.
Yeah, I suppose get to the bike park and within that first couple of seconds on those really fast, flatter runs, and those bikes do lose a bit of agility. So it's a fair point, Tom.
And that agility is what makes a normal bike so much fun on, you know, the bike park and those traversing trails. I'm sorry, the normal bike has it.
Now, Tom, I know I keep banging on about how things keep getting better, but these two bikes that we've been riding today are kind of the epitome of that, I think. We've got one which is built from the ground up. It uses their own motor, and in fact, it's so sort of ahead that they built their own bike around it. Fully integrated controls, you know, it's more powerful, big battery. It's an incredible machine. And then the bike I've been riding, it's built around their lightweight chassis, but it uses now the new Bosch 4-power motor. So maybe this is the future. I mean, they feel great to ride.
I have to admit, I picked up the Amflow last night. I cycled it home. I needed to register it with an app. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. Pressed a button on my phone thing, up comes a QR code on the display. Yeah. Take a picture of that, hit a thing, do an update, and like, it's so user integrated, so user friendly, it blew me away. Having used lots of other electronic stuff, which just confuses the hell out of me, this was incredible. And then riding it, I don't know how it's legal. Like, that motor it's insane. It's kind of like the Bosch race motor, which is like super full gas, it almost feels motorbike like, but it's still legal.
Yeah.
But that thing's crazy. And yet I can see why it's so addictive. And if that is the future of e-bikes, I think there will be a lot of people who are like, yeah, I want this in my life.
So yeah, the white is heavier than, say, a regular bike with that sort of travel. But I mean, it goes like stink and it feels amazing. And I can still, you know, chuck it around. Okay, it needs a bit more muscle, but I think that these two bikes are great examples of where things are heading.
I think it's fair to say that both of these bikes look really good. You know, Amflow have packed an 800 watt-hour battery into that down tube, and you, from the side profile, you wouldn't know. Yeah. And okay, the white looks like a slightly more traditional in 2024 e-bike, slightly bigger down tube. You can see where the motor is. You see you've got your extender on there, but that is a good-looking bike.
It is a good-looking bike, and I think going back to looking at the bikes that we first started testing, they're such a different beast. The geometry was kind of funky. They were really novel to ride. But I don't think they were getting anywhere close to replacing our regular bikes at that time. And it's clear that these brands, or brands like these, are ploughing tons of cash into the development of bikes like these.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. And, you know, for the e-biker, that's great. But for the normal rider who, you know, wants to ride a really up-to-date, non-powered bike, that money's been sucked out of the R&D pool. So a normal bike's going to stagnate over the next few years, and obviously a lot of the money that's been spent on the e-bike is to make sure that the battery and the motor don't sort of detract from the normal ride. They're not developing geometry, they're not developing suspension, they're sort of trying to make allowances for the motor and battery, and that doesn't improve bikes, that just makes these a bit better. I am going to stick with my assertion though, these are not replacing my normal mountain bike. We're going to go and hit a descent, so I think this is where I'm going to really sort of notice the differences between an e-bike and a normal one.
Tom, you can't deny just how good e-bikes feel on downhills.
No, I bloody can.
Really? Even though you've got the weight, it just means you're glued to the trail. The bulk of the bike helps overcome the friction in the suspension, which everyone knows in terms of performance, friction is the enemy.
Do that, yeah.
So everything just seems to work really well. Okay, maybe on some bikes there's a bit of rattle here and there, but once they get going, these things are incredible.
Where they get going is straight, fast, rough things. And there, yeah, hang on, point to the exit somewhere down there and just like go ride it out. Yeah. Where they don't work is on like steep, nibbly stuff or like tight bits where you're trying to like tech round things because the weight of the bike just like diminishes that agility. Or on like twisty tracks where you're sort of like picking up speed, losing speed, picking up speed, losing speed, because again, you're trying to accelerate and then decelerate. You've got to try and find your braking point somewhere down there. It's a different like kind of riding.
But I think if the weight on the bike is really well balanced, I think through the turns, these things are next level.
So long as it's not stop and start. I do get that. Like I have ridden e-bikes and had days when I'm like, this thing is incredible. And I'm not going to say they're terrible at all. I think just overall for like all the kind of mountain biking that I love, they don't quite hit the spot, and I'm always aware of that extra weight.
Okay, I can see your point, but I still think in most situations they have the edge.
One of the things I definitely appreciate from the rise of the e-bike is some of the rise of the e-bike specific component, which you can actually put on your normal bike, like strong burly tires with loads of grip are great, forks that can take a bit of a beating. There's plenty of like reliability there because they have to be, because everything's a little bit heavier. I think one of the arguments that many people have against an e-bike is this whole trail erosion thing, and I'm not sure I buy that necessarily. Yes, there's more traffic because you can do more laps, so in some places they'll see more tires. We are only talking a few kilos though, and in a system weight thing, it's actually a small percentage. I think you can feel it when you ride, but I think in terms of like the trail erosion, I don't necessarily buy it. I think we need some science on that.
I guess to that point, maybe sometimes where people don't recalibrate their braking and overshoot turns and stuff like that, that's maybe where we're seeing obvious Strava lines, those sorts of things. So it is about just, you know, learning how that bike rides and making sure you're sticking to the legal trail you're on. Now, Tom, I know you're not the biggest fan of bike maintenance there is. How would you feel about living with an e-bike?
They're definitely not quite as simple as a normal bike. You know, I'm not the best at maintaining a normal bike, let alone one that's got a motor and a battery, and you have to be kind of careful about where you spray things. You've got to keep things charged, and then even like on a bigger scale, you've got to think about the warranties. You know, if something does go wrong with your motor and either you're not the first owner or you've had it for a couple of years, you know, that's going to be weighing on your mind a little bit.
I suppose though, as more bikes are developed and brought to market, the infrastructure is going to get better. So I would hope there'll be a better support system in place in the next few years.
For sure. I think there are other practicalities to consider as well though. You know, if you put your bike in the back of a van, it's a bit heavier. If you're someone who has to put it on top of a car and maybe you're not super tall or super strong, it's quite a tricky thing to do. And then even like just putting a front wheel in and out, the bike sort of wants to fall over and you're trying to hold it with one hand and put the axle. I find them quite difficult to live with in that respect. And then I like going on holiday and I don't like driving 10 hours across France. But you can't fly with anything bigger than a 160 watt-hour battery, which is only the size of a battery extender, not the main one, so you can't fly with them.
Yeah, I guess that is pretty limiting, and I suppose even for, well, especially for simpletons like me, even oiling the chain can get pretty tricky.
Yeah, because the cranks spin,
yeah.
but the chain ring doesn't. Ugh.
Exactly.
So maybe my normal bike is easier to live with.
That was very responsible.
Right, we've been riding, we've had a good day out on the hill.
We have.
Rob, do you think e-bikes are gonna completely take over the world of mountain biking?
Good question. So I think if we go by our experience today, the right here, right now, there's still space for regular bikes. These things still have room for improvement, but I think if they continue to improve and advance at the rate they have been, I reckon 5, maybe 10 years time, the next bike someone buys is going to be an e-bike.
I'm going to concede to your original point. I think in 5 years' time, most people will be buying e-bikes at that upper level. There's still going to be people who need cheaper bikes, and these good e-bikes won't get that cheap. And racing is still going to be really important to the market. And there's going to be loads of people watching racing, getting totally stoked in it and wanting the same bikes that the pros are riding on.
Yeah, Tom, you're absolutely right. I think there's always going to be space for the regular bikes, but I don't think you can deny the rise of the e-bike will continue, and we are going to just see more and more of them on the trails.
Absolutely. Now, if you want to see full reviews of both of these bikes, stay tuned to the channel. And if you want to see a review of the Fox 36 versus the RockShox Lyrik, you can already find that on MBUK TV.
Yeah!